The episode of Mei Meriva, in which Moshe Rabbeinu extracted water from a rock by hitting it, leading to a divine decree that he not enter Eretz Yisrael, is shrouded in mystery. The subsequent episode, in which the Jewish people complain about the mun, calling it Lechem HaKlokel, is similarly enigmatic. Why did they suddenly complain now about the miraculous bread, which could taste like any food, after being sustained by it for 40 years? Rav Natali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, the Netziv, in his commentary Hamek Davar on Chumash, proposes a powerful explanation of the first episode. Sefer Bamidbar, covering the second year and the 40th year of Am Yisrael's journey in the Midbar, represents a transition from the supernatural divine conduct, Hanhaga Nisiyit, which was the norm in the desert, to the Hanhaga Tivit, the more natural existence which would take place in Eretz Yisrael, also being guided by divine providence, even if not as apparent. In the Midbar, miraculous heavenly mun provided nourishment. In Eretz Yisrael, wheat from the ground would be the source of the Jews' daily bread. In the desert, water from a rock quenched the Jews' thirst. In the land of Israel, water from lakes, wells, and cisterns, replenished by rain, would provide for them. In the last year, Hashem prepared the Jewish people for this transition, much as a mother, while still nursing her child, begins to introduce solid foods before fully weaning the baby. Moshe was told to take the miraculous staff, which represented the miraculous divine conduct, but not use it unless absolutely necessary. Rather, according to Netziv, based on a medrash, Moshe was told to speak not to the rock, but to speak at the rock. He was to teach Torah and lead the Jews in prayer at the rock, and this merit would cause the miracle of the water once again flowing from it. Witnessing this would prepare them for their entry into the Holy Land, when rain, even if withheld, would be granted by Hashem through this same procedure. Moshe, because of his anger at the Jews' insolence, was not able to think clearly of Divrei Torah to transmit, and therefore he had to resort to the default supernatural approach of hitting the rock, that which was used in Parshat Beshalach when the rock first gave forth its water. By doing this, Moshe lost the opportunity to teach Bnei Yisrael this important lesson of relating properly to Hashem through Torah and Tefillah, even in the more natural divine providence of Eretz Yisrael. My father-in-law, Rabbi Yitzchak Kandel, developed an insightful mashal to drive home the point of the miraculous and the natural, both being two aspects of divine providence. Picture the scene of Yoshua leading the new generation into Eretz Yisrael just before the holiday of Pesach. Since the death of Moshe, the manna had stopped falling, but it still lasted until Pesach. This new generation of Jews, who were mostly born in the desert, were used to bread falling from the sky. This is the only reality they know. They now have to start eating bread from wheat which grew from the ground. Yoshua gives the Jews sacks of wheat kernels to plant to make bread. They question him. What? Every child knows that bread falls from the sky. Yoshua says, trust me, I'm a little older than you, and this is the way bread used to be made before the miracle of the mun. Sure enough, they plant it, out comes wheat, they grind it into flour and make it into bread. And all turned to heaven and exclaimed, Baruch atah Hashem, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Miracle of miracles, bread could also grow from the ground. The only difference between God's miracles and His natural order is how often they occur. Having spent a year learning Torah in Eretz Yisrael, becoming more cognizant of its recent history, and the miraculous development and sustaining of a thriving yishuv, even within the broad confines of the natural order, we can reinforce our awareness of constant divine providence, as well as working on its corollary, bitachon, trust and reliance on Hashem. The vacation settings of the summer, often in more rural environments, also allow us to admire Hashem's world, in which His wisdom and ever-present providence are apparent. Kayat Naim to all of you from Michlala.